Welcome to part 2 of the 2-part mini-series on the use of the Animator Pad in Spektrumsynth. In part 1 I showed basic connections that are available right on the pad itself. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use the Animator Pad to transmit messages to the wavetable router and to Grand Central Station. We're also going to see how messages from the Grand Central Station can actually come up and control the Animator Pad. Let's use the solo oscillator section for the next example. The solo oscillators can work in FM mode. Doing FM in the solo oscillator section involves using a sine wave oscillator here to frequency modulate one or both of the multi-waveform solo oscillators. You can also modulate the cutoff points of the filters with FM. This control here acts as an amount output for the sine wave, which controls the amount of FM. Typically, you would assign an envelope generator to control the FM volume. Here, envelope generator 2 is controlling the amplitude output of the FM oscillator. Let's add some Animator Pad controlled FM to the patch that you heard in the previous tutorial. First, we'll get an envelope generator to control the amplitude of the FM oscillator. And we hear the FM event. But we could control the FM amount from the pad. So a simple direct connection would be to have the pad output control the amplitude of the FM oscillator, replacing the control from the envelope generator. So let's set that up as Y-axis. And like the direct control of parameters, to send messages to Grand Central Station, we have to turn up the range amounts here. Let's put the wavetable back in. So now you've seen how we can send pad messages to Grand Central Station. The same thing is possible to be able to send them to the wavetable router with this knob here. Although you only see a Y-axis knob, both X and Y do go to the wavetable router. But due to space restrictions, I wasn't able to afford a range control knob, but we still have range and polarity control up here in the patcher. The last thing to talk about is controlling the pad from a modulator. That's a little different because what we're going to do is we're going to have a modulator source in Grand Central Station transmit messages to the pad. We can leave everything else set up here, but what we have to do is activate these transmit buttons, and now we have transmit ranges for a positive or an inverted transmission value. So we'll just set these both up to positive full. Let's use a couple of LFOs to control the pad movement. Let's go to LFO 9, make sure it's on. Now to send that LFO to the pad, we find those here. Let's go to X, give it some range, and then let's set up another LFO and send that to Y. So we'll go over to here, LFO 10 perhaps, and we'll send that to pad Y, give it some range, make sure 9 and 10 are both turned on. So you see the two LFOs causing movement in the X and the Y axis. That movement is velocity sensitive. And the movement decays to 0, controlled by this release control. So that shows some of the twisted routing that's possible with the Animator Pad. Up until now, we've seen that the pad activity starts when you press a key. But there's a way to have non-key dependent continuous action running on the pad. That's the mysterious green go button that you've been noticing. This can be used if you want your LFOs to be continuously running, usually running sync to your clock. I'll talk more about clock, sync, and various modes of the LFO in another tutorial. And there we have it, Animator Pad Essentials. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. This is Don Garbutt for New Frontiers Audio.